Alright, so today I'll be discussing the Saturn Duality. Essentially, what this video is about is that there is a synchronism going on between the planets and the Greek gods back then back when Greek mythology was far more popular and venerated during those days. Now, Diodorus says that the Chaldeans called Kronos Saturn by the name Helios. Now, what's interesting about that is that since Helios and Saturn were identified as the same deity, from according to him, the Chaldean point of view, then there's something quite peculiar going on. And the reason why I say that is because if one were to look up what Saturn's elements are composed of, you'll find out the following. And that is from the particular NASA .gov website. I'll be reading from the NASA Gov Solar System Exploration website, in which it says, like Jupiter, Saturn is mostly made of hydrogen and helium, the same two main components that make up the Sun. Now, what's interesting is if we go to look at Uranus, it also contains those elements as well. It really makes one wonder, perhaps since the ancients maybe knew something like that, maybe not quite the scientific properties of those planets, but when by identifying it with the gas giants, it would seem to make the astrological gods blend in with the theological gods, and this is where we get into astral theology, in which the planets that were deified into gods and the humanoid gods were blended together. So Kronos as Helios overthrew Uranus, even took his place as the quote-unquote sun, and then Sol Invictus, or Zeus in this particular case, also dethroned the planet Saturn as the sun and took its place. And now the planets orbit around the sun, and now Zeus in that circumstance as Helios would be viewed as the king of the gods. So the planets orbiting around him would be the council, the Olympian Council. Now it's very important because if we get into Orphism, the Orphic text mentions Zeus, Hades, Helios, Dionysus, three gods in one godhead. So now with Zeus, with all of these attributes of all these different gods, this really makes him the ultimate supreme god. This would make him a dying rising god. It would associate him with the winter solstice. It would also make him be worshipped back to back with Zeus. I meant to say, it would make Kronos worshipped back to back with Zeus. That's what I meant to say. Because with Saturn being on Saturday and Zeus Helios being on Sunday, father and son, Sunday is the offspring of Saturday, that's where we get into the duo. Because then we had the duality where Saturn and Helios are two faces of the same god. Then we got into the duo between Zeus and Kronos, in which Saturday comes first, then Sunday comes next. And then that's how all that comes together. By synchronizing the planets with the gods, which is why the gods are often depicted later on with solar halos, In some cases, they were depicted as they were understood as the planet entirely. However, that's just pure astrology. Where we get into the astrotheology, they would be depicted with the celestial bodies, such as Helios. However, not all Greeks understood Helios to be the sun. They understood him as the force that controlled the sun, not the sun itself. That's getting into the humanoid gods, which is another situation. But if they are viewed as the same god, which they people that didn't like having many religions decided, okay, let's just make them the same god. That way we don't have to put up with distinguishing the humanoid from the planetary deity, and just make them the same. And by identifying them with these gas giants, it provided a convenient way to do just that. Now, because of the Saturn and being viewed as a sun, it has caused some people to wonder if Saturn really was a sun, but that's a whole nother topic. This video is simply about how the Saturn, the planet, being named after the god, became merged with the god through astrotheology. Or in other words, theologization of the god, so that way he would be fully understood as both a god and a planet simultaneously being the same thing. That's kind of what I'm trying to say by through the process of theologizing the celestial body. Or really theologizing, I shouldn't be using that word. I really should be saying the planet was deified into the god. That's the point I'm trying to make. But other than that, this is pretty much how this whole duality worked between the planet and the god Saturn being Helios simultaneously.